I didn't realize how loud a quiet dorm could feel until the night the room across the hall stopped being empty. My freshman year of college was supposed to be the first real taste of independence. A tiny dorm room, shared bathrooms, late night vending machine runs, all that stuff people complain about but secretly remember fondly. My dorm was older than most buildings on campus, built in the 1970s and barely renovated since. The hallways always smelled faintly like old carpet and industrial cleaner, and the fluorescent lights buzzed just enough to be annoying. I moved in 2 weeks before classes officially started because I'd signed up for orientation volunteer work. My floor was mostly empty during those weeks. Only a few early arrivals occupied the long hallway. I didn't really know any of them yet, except for a guy named Marcus who lived next door. He was friendly, the kind of guy who always had headphones on but still said hi. There was one room, though, the one directly across the hall from mine, that never seemed to get a resident. The door was slightly off-white compared to the others, like it hadn't been repainted in years. The metal numbers, 217, were a little crooked, and even though it was clearly locked and dark inside, I always felt watched. When I walked past it, the RA told me during check-in that the room was scheduled for maintenance and would be assigned later. I didn't think much of it. It was an old building. Everything needed maintenance. But the second week into the semester, something changed. It was around 1:30 a.m. I was hunched over my laptop, finishing an online module that was due in the morning. The hallway had been silent for hours. Then I heard it. A door closing, soft, controlled, not slammed, not accidentally bumped, not the wind, just gently shut. I paused my typing. Another sound followed, the distinct click of the deadbolt turning on the door across the hall. I glanced at my own door, half expecting someone to walk by, but the peephole stayed dark. I stood up and walked closer, just listening. For a moment, it was completely silent. Then, shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. Someone was definitely inside room 217. But that was impossible, right? 10 minutes later, I heard a muffled thud. A chair moving, or something heavy being dragged. It wasn't loud enough to wake anyone else, but it was just loud enough for me, the person directly across from it, to be fully aware someone was in there. I tried to shrug it off as late-night movement activity. Maybe the RA forgot to tell me the new student arrived. Still, when I turned off my lights and crawled into bed, I couldn't get rid of the feeling that whoever or whatever was in there had been waiting for me to go quiet the next morning. I caught the Ra in the hallway. "Hey, does someone live in 217 now?" I asked casually. She looked up from her clipboard, confused. "No, not yet. They were supposed to finish repairs last week, but maintenance is behind schedule." I felt the hairs on my neck stand up. "Are you sure? I heard noises in there last night." She frowned. "That's weird. The room should be completely empty. No furniture except a bed frame, and it's locked with a master key only I have." I decided not to push the issue, but that night, the noises came back. This time, though, they were different. There wasn't just shuffling or THUD denied. There was breathing, heavy, slow breathing. It echoed faintly through the bottom gap of the door into the hallway. I sat on the floor against my door, listening, because I couldn't tell if the sound was real or if my brain was playing tricks on me. But it was real. At around 3 a.m., the breathing stopped abruptly, followed by the soft creak of footsteps walking toward the door inside the room. Then, dash tap, a single knock, not on my door, on theirs. Like someone inside room 217 was knocking from the inside out. I froze completely, holding my own breath. But the hallway stayed silent. 2 nights later, Marcus knocked on my door around midnight. He looked freaked out. "Dude, have you noticed anything weird? Like anyone walking around really late?" My chest tightened. "Around 217. He nodded immediately. Someone keeps trying to open my door, he whispered, like scratching at the handle. Then, when I get close, it stops. He laughed nervously, like he wanted to pretend it was nothing, but I could see in his eyes. Kay already knew it wasn't normal. I debated telling him about the breathing, but I didn't want to scare him more. Maybe someone's drunk, I offered. Marcus shrugged. Maybe. We both knew it wasn't that. It was a Thursday night when everything escalated. I was about to sleep when I heard it again, movement in 217. But this time, the sound wasn't just shuffling, it was pacing, back and forth, slow and steady, over and over. I opened my door quietly, just enough to peek into the hallway. The light above flickered faintly. The pacing continued, soft but unmistakable. Stepped 1 foot into the hallway, just one, and the sound inside stopped instantly, like whoever was inside had turned toward the door. I froze. 20 silent seconds passed. Then something slid under the door of room 217, a piece of paper, a small, folded note. My heart thudded painfully as I stepped forward, leaned down, and picked it up. The paper smelled old, not dusty, but like something that had been sealed away for years. I unfolded it. The handwriting was jagged, uneven, like someone wrote it in the dark. Do not open your door when it comes. I felt my stomach drop. My first instinct was to show Marcus, but before I could move, a sudden pounding slammed against my door, not from 217, but directly behind me. Bang, bang. The force of it shook the frame. I jumped back into my room and slammed the door shut. Who is it? I yelled, my voice cracking. No answer, just one final, slow, deliberate knock, tap, tap, then silence. I stood there for at least a minute, barely breathing, until Marcus cracked open his door a few inches. Dude, was that you? He whispered. I shook my head slowly. He swallowed hard. Then what the hell? Just walked down the hallway. The next night, neither of us wanted to be alone. So we set up both our phones facing the hallway, propped against textbooks. We sat in my room, lights off, listening. At 2:14 a.m., the pacing began inside 217. Then, the breathing died deep, slow, damp. Marcus whispered, "Holy crap. It sounds like it's right next to us." I nodded, silently, gripping my blanket. Suddenly, the hallway lights flickered hard enough to hum. A faint shadow crossed under my door, but there were no footsteps. Then, the knocking started again, not on my door this time, on Marcus's. 3 slow knocks. We waited until it stopped. 20 minutes later, the hallway went dead silent. We checked our phones. The footage caught nothing but darkness, except at the 2:14 timestamp, the exact moment the noises began. The camera auto-focused on my door, but not on the door handle, on the bottom gap, as if something stood right behind it. Something tall enough to cast a shadow, but still to be human. Marcus stared at the screen. That's not us, right? I shook my head. Of course, it wasn't. 2 days later. K. The Raw slipped a notice under our doors. Maintenance will enter room 217 tomorrow. Do not disturb. That night felt heavier somehow. The air in the hallway had a weight to it, like humidity without moisture. I went to bed early, hoping to sleep through whatever might happen. But around 3:27 a.m., I woke to the sound of my doorknob turning slowly, softly, like someone on the other side was testing how quietly they could open it. I sat straight up, heart pounding, staring at the shadow under my door. The doorknob clicked again. Someone whispered, a voice I didn't recognize, a voice too deep and too close. "Let me in." I covered my mouth, shaking violently. The whisper came again, harsher this time. "Let me in." Then the sound I will never forget. The door across the hall creaked open. Room 217. Only it shouldn't have been possible. That door had been locked for weeks, but I heard it clearly. A slow, wet, dragging sound followed. Something heavy moving across the floor, closer, closer, stopping directly outside my room. The doorknob turned again, harder this time. I stood up, barely breathing, and pressed my weight against the door. Something on the other side exhaled, long and raspy, like wind moving through a broken window. Then, just as suddenly as it started, everything stopped. Silence. I stayed awake until sunrise. Later that morning, I heard footsteps in the hall. Maintenance had arrived. I stepped out just in time to see two workers unlocking room 217. They pushed the door open and immediately stepped back. The room was freezing cold. I could feel it from across the hall. One of the workers frowned. "Why is the bed in the middle of the room?" The other shook his head. "We didn't leave it like that." I peeked over their shoulders. The bed frame was perfectly centered, not against the wall like every other dorm room. The vent grill had been ripped off, and every inch of the walls, every single inch, had deep vertical scratches. Not random scratches, clawing, dragging, as if someone had been trying to climb out or up. One of the workers turned pale. This wasn't here last week." They shut the door quickly and refused to talk about it. But the noises, the pacing, the knocking, they all stopped completely for 2 nights. The hallway was silent again. I should have felt relieved. DIDN, single quotes, because on the third night at 2:17 a.m., a new note slid under my door. Different. Handwriting. Sharper, more frantic. 2 words. "It's back." And then came the knock, not from room 217, not from the hallway, but from inside my closet. Everyone said the dorm's 3rd floor was normal, until I realized someone else lived there who wasn't supposed to. My sophomore year started out pretty normally. I had moved into Crawford Hall, one of the older dorms on campus, tall, brick, and shaped like a giant H. Students joked that the H stood for haunted. At first, I laughed it off. I wasn't a believer in ghosts or paranormal stuff. I was a math major, a logic guy. I trusted what I could see, measure, or calculate. But by October, I learned something that logic couldn't explain. Something or someone lived on my floor who wasn't supposed to exist. My new room was on floor 3, room 3B12. The hallway was long, lined with identical beige doors and flickering lights. My roommate, Ethan, wouldn't arrive for another week, so I had the place to myself. The first strange thing happened that same evening. I was unpacking when I heard footsteps outside my door. Slow, dragging footsteps. I thought maybe another student was moving in, but when I opened the door, the hallway was completely empty. No footsteps, no voices, not even a door closing somewhere in the distance. Just silence. I brushed it off as my imagination, but later that night, while brushing my teeth in the communal bathroom, I heard another sound, a girl crying, faint, muffled, coming from the shower stall at the end. "Hello?" I called softly. The crying stopped immediately. I walked closer, pushing open each shower curtain. Empty. When I reached the last stall, a chill ran through me. The floor was soaked, but no one was there. No wet footprints, no running water, just a lingering coldness that felt wrong. I left quickly, trying not to look behind me. That night was the first night I slept with a light on. The second night, around 2:40 a.m., I woke to a soft tapping sound. Tap, tap, tap. At first, I thought it was a radiator noise, but then I realized it was coming from my window. I sat up slowly. The blinds were down, but I could see the faint shape of a hand pressing against the other side of the thin plastic slats. A small hand, no, a cold hand. I tried to tell myself it was tree branches or something until the hand slid downward, leaving a faint smear on the inside of the blinds. almost like condensation. My heart was hammering now. I got up, grabbed the metal broom handle from the closet, and approached slowly. The tapping stopped. I hesitated, then ripped the blinds up in one quick motion. Nothing, just an empty courtyard, 3 floors down, no ledge, no balcony, no place for someone to stand. I stood frozen, staring at my own reflection in the glass. Then something else caught my eye near the bottom corner of the window. A single wet fingerprint, small, smudged, as if from a child. Except this was a college dorm. I backed away from the window and didn't sleep the rest of the night. A few days later, students started filling the floor. The noise, the laughter, the movement, all of it made the weirdness feel less threatening. Still, couldn't shake the feeling that someone else was there, someone who didn't belong. One evening, I decided to bring it up casually to my Jenna, while we were both in the lounge. "Hey, random question," I said. "Does anyone on our floor have a kid or a younger sibling visiting a lot?" She looked confused. "No, definitely not." "Why? I thought I saw a small handprint on my window," I said. Jenna stiffened slightly. "What room are you in?" "It's 3B12. She paused, then asked the question that made my stomach twist. "Have you met the girl from 3B02 yet?" I shook my head. "There's someone in that room. I never see anyone go in or out." Jenna let out a very slow exhale. "There used to be." I frowned. "What do you mean, used to be?" She didn't answer. Not directly. Instead, she said quietly, "Don't knock on that door. And don't open your own door if you're here knocking late at night." A chill ran down my spine. "Why not?" Jenna forced a smile. "Just trust me." Then she walked away, and that was the moment I knew something had happened in 3B02, and whatever it wasn't finished. 2 weeks later, Ethan finally arrived, a loud, friendly type who instantly filled the room with energy. I thought maybe his presence would make things feel normal again. For one night, it did. But on the second night, he shook me awake at 4 o'clock a.m. "Bro, someone's in the hallway." I sat up. "What do you mean?" "Listen." We both stayed perfectly still. Shuffle, shuffle. A soft, dragging noise moved slowly past our door. Ethan leaned toward me. "Is someone hurt?" I shook my head. "I've been hearing stuff since I moved in." He raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" But before I could answer, the footsteps stopped directly outside our room. We stared at each other. Then tap, tap, tap. A knock, dot, soft, rhythmic, childlike. Ethan whispered, "Who knocks like that?" I swallowed hard. "Don't open it." "Why not?" Jenna said. But before I could finish the sentence, the knock came again. Tap, tap, tap. Ethan stood up. "Dude, I'm gonna check." "No," I hissed, grabbing his arm. "Seriously, don't." He hesitated. Then the knock changed. It became slower, heavier, almost like someone pressing their forehead against the door. We waited. No more knocking, no footsteps leaving, just a presence, quiet, unmoving, standing on the other side. Finally, after a full minute, the old pipe near the ceiling rattled, and whatever was out there drifted away. Ethan sat down slowly. "Dude, who was that?" he whispered. But deep down, I already knew. Not who. What? 2 nights later, around 3 o'clock a.m., I woke to Ethan shaking my shoulder. "It's happening again." "Are they knocking?" "No." He pointed toward the door. "Worse." I listened. Instead of knocking, I heard a door creaking open somewhere in the hallway. Long, slow. Old hinges, straining. Ethan whispered, "That's 3B02. No one lives there." I whispered back. We both got out of bed and moved closer to our own door, listening. The hallway was silent for a long moment. Then, shuffle. Oh. Someone stepped out of 3B02. Someone small. Someone dragging their feet right toward us. Ethan mouthed, "Don't breathe." We stayed perfectly still as the shuffling grew louder, then stopped directly in front of our door. A tiny shadow slipped under the bottom gap, just a faint silhouette, small, still, facing us. And then I heard it. A girl whispering, but not words, humming, a soft, broken tune like a child trying to remember a lullaby. I felt tears in my eyes, not from sadness, but from pure fear. The humming stopped abruptly. Then a single whisper, "Why won't you let me in?" Ethan clamped a hand over his mouth. The voice was so close it felt like she was speaking through the wood. We didn't answer. We didn't move. We didn't breathe. Then the girl whispered again, this time directly into the bottom gap of the door. "I'm cold." The temperature in the room dropped instantly. I could see my breath. Ethan stepped back slowly, shaking uncontrollably, and then, as quietly as she came, she shuffled away, back down the hall, back to 3B02, and the door closed behind her. The next morning, we confronted Jenna. We demanded answers. She resisted at first, but eventually she caved. What she told us didn't make sense, not logically, but emotionally, physically. It explained everything. 3 years ago, a freshman named Leela lived in 3B02. She was shy, didn't make friends, spent most of her time alone. One winter night, during a campus-wide power outage, she disappeared. No forced entry, no signs of leaving, no body ever found. Her roommate had been away for the weekend. When she returned, she found the door to 3BO to slightly open. Lights off. Room freezing cold. Window unlocked, and on the inside of the glass, a child-sized handprint, the same kind Ethan and I had seen. The university quietly locked the room and reassigned the roommate to another floor. But ever since then, people on the 3rd floor reported crying in the showers, wet footprints that led nowhere, someone knocking late at night, whispering outside doors. The feeling of being watched from under the bed, no one lasted long on that floor, except us. 2 days after that conversation, something happened that still keeps me awake. It was 2:11 a.m. I woke to my blanket being slowly pulled downward. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but then it slid further and further until it dropped onto the floor. I sat up sharply. Ethan. His bed was empty. The sheets were tossed aside. His phone was on the floor. His shoes were still by the door. He couldn't have left. And then, heard it breathing. Not heavy, not adult, small, shaky, right behind me. I turned around slowly and saw a figure standing in the far corner of the room. A girl, hair wet, head tilted, clothes soaked like she had just come in from rain. Except it wasn't raining. Her eyes were dark, unfocused. She looked confused, lost, sad, like she didn't understand where she was. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. Then she whispered, "You left me alone." I shook my head. I don't know you." She stepped closer. The floor beneath her left small, wet footprints. "Why won't anyone stay with me?" she whispered. I couldn't breathe. My entire body felt frozen. Then she leaned her head slightly. "You saw my hands?" she whispered. "You heard me." Finally managed to speak. "I can help you." Her expression changed instantly, from sad to furious. "You didn't open the door." The lights flickered violently. The air turned freezing. She stepped closer, closer, until she was only a foot from me. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Ethan opened his. My heart stopped. "What?" She smiled, a broken, lifeless smile. Then she vanished, just blinked out. The room fell silent, and Ethan never came back. Campus police searched for weeks. They claimed Ethan must have left the dorm in the middle of the night, but his wallet, keys, and phone were still in the room. His bed was empty, his shoes untouched. The door never opened, according to the hallway cameras, but on the footage from 2:12 a.m. Something strange happened. A small shadow, child-sized, slipped under our dorm room door, and the camera flickered for exactly 11 seconds. When it came back on, Ethan was gone. Only one thing remained, a wet handprint on the inside of our door. But sometimes, even now, when I wake up late at night, I hear tapping on my window, soft, childlike, patient, and sometimes I hear a whisper, "Why didn't you open the door?" I never believed in hidden rooms until I found one inside my dorm that didn't exist on any blueprint. During my freshman year at Crestwood University, I lived in Harrington Hall, one of those long, rectangular dorm buildings that felt more like an old motel than a student residence. It wasn't fancy, but it was cheap. Tim, that's all I cared about. My room was 1C27, bottom floor, west wing. The building smelled like old carpet and microwave popcorn. The hallway lights buzzed. The walls were thin. Typical college dorm vibes. But the weird part started on my second week there, and it all began with a door I'd never seen before. A door that wasn't supposed to exist. The first strange thing happened around 1:30 a.m. I was lying in bed, trying to ignore the loud tick-tock sounds coming from the girls' room across the hall, when I heard something behind my headboard. Knock, knock. I sat up. My bed was pushed against the wall, and behind that wall was just a storage area. According to the RA, the entire West Wing storage unit was sealed years ago. I leaned closer. Knock, knock, knock. But it wasn't frantic. It wasn't loud. It was faint, deliberate, like someone quietly asking if they could come in. I put my ear to the wall. Then a voice whispered from the other side, "Is anyone there?" I jumped back so fast I fell off the bed. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next morning, caught my Trevor, during his rounds. "Hey, weird question," I said. "What's behind my wall?" He blinked. "Behind your room?" "Nothing. It's just closed storage." "Are you sure?" I asked, because I heard knocking and a voice. Trevor frowned. "No one has access to that room. It was sealed after an accident years ago." The word accident hung in the air. "What kind of accident?" I asked. Trevor shook his head. "I'm not supposed to talk about it. Just, if you hear anything again, ignore it. Ignore it." "Yeah, right." Because that night, it got worse. Around 2 a.m., I woke to a cold draft, which didn't make sense. My window was shut. The draft was coming from behind my mini fridge in the corner of the room I never touched. I moved the fridge aside, and that's when I saw it. A narrow outline in the wall. A door, painted over. Thin, almost invisible unless you knew what to look for. At the bottom of the door was a tiny crack, just big enough for air to seep through. Crouched down and touched it, freezing. Then I heard breathing got slow, shaky, right? On the other side, I stumbled back. My heart was pounding. This wasn't normal, not even close. But what terrified me most wasn't the breathing. It was the fact that whoever or whatever was behind that sealed door was standing inches away from me that night. I pushed my dresser in front of the hidden door. Not that it mattered. At exactly 3:12 a.m., I woke to something moving the dresser from the other side, not pushing it hard, not trying to break through, just scraping a single finger along the wood dot. Slow, gentle, repetitive. I clutched my blanket to my chest. "Hello?" A voice whispered. My throat tightened. It was a girl's voice, young, maybe 18 or 19, soft, trembling. "Please, don't leave me alone again." My heart dropped again. I whispered, "Who are you?" She didn't answer right away. Then she whispered, "Do you live here now?" I swallowed. "Why, yeah." A soft exhale came through the door, like she was relieved. "I've been waiting," she whispered. "For what?" "For someone to talk to." Silence filled the room, heavy, cold. Then she whispered again. The last person wouldn't stay. I felt myself shaking. Why? She hesitated. Then, in a quiet, childlike voice, because I scared him. I felt my blood turn to ice. Before I could respond, she asked, "Will you stay?" I lunged forward and shoved the dresser harder against the wall, blocking everything. The whisper stopped, but I didn't sleep. The next day, I went to the front desk. "Hey," I said, "was someone living in 1C27 before me?" The receptionist checked her computer. "Oh yeah. Last year, you had a roommate assigned early in the semester." "Assigned?" I asked, not actually here. "Oh, he checked in," she said, "but he only stayed for 2 days." I felt the hairs on my neck rise. "Do you know his name?" She looked at the screen. "Evan Green." "What happened to him?" She squinted at the monitor. "Huh? That's weird." "What?" "There's no checkout record. He never turned in his keys. He never moved to another dorm. He just vanished." My stomach twisted. Vanished, just like Ethan. Just like the girl from the other story. Just like all these dorm legends that students whisper about but never believe. I walked back to my room, shaking, because I knew where he went. He never left. He was still in that sealed room, or worse. He wasn't alone in there. 3 nights later, everything escalated. I woke at 3 o'clock. A.M. to a soft click. The sound of a latch turning. My eyes snapped open. The painted over door behind my dresser was moving the corner of it, flexing outward slightly, like someone was pushing from behind. I froze. "Don't move. Don't breathe." Then the girl whispered. I finally got it open. A cold gust flooded the room. I grabbed my phone to call someone, anyone, but the screen froze, glitching with static. The door creaked. The dresser scraped forward an inch. Then another dot. Something pressed harder from the other side. And then I heard it. Footsteps. Not one set, 2.1, light and small. One heavier. Someone else was in there with her. My chest tightened so hard I couldn't breathe. A deep male voice whispered from behind the door. "You shouldn't have talked to her." I stumbled back, nearly tripping over my backpack. The girl whispered again. "He doesn't like when someone new comes." My voice cracked. Who is he?" Silence. Then she whispered, "My roommate." I choked on a breath. "The roommate who vanished?" "Evan. The one who checked in and never checked out." A violent bang hit the door. Then another. The dresser shook. The wall cracked. A deep voice hissed, "Let us in." I felt my knees weaken. Another bang. So hard, the dresser slid almost 6 inches. I screamed and ran out of the room barefoot. Sprinting down the hall, the door of 1C27 rattled behind me as something slammed into it again and again. I pounded on my roused door until he opened. Dude, what happened?" I pointed toward my hallway. "Something's in my room," I gasped. "They're trying to get out." Trevor frowned and walked with me back to my door. But when we got there, everything was silent. The dresser was exactly where it originally was. The wall showed no cracks. The hidden door outline had vanished completely, as if it had never been there. Trevor sighed and put a hand on my shoulder. "You need sleep, man." But I knew what I heard. I knew what I saw. And I knew, without a doubt, someone had opened that sealed room. Someone who wasn't alone. I spent my last night packing. That same faint, cold draft brushed against my ankle while I folded clothes. A whisper came from the corner. Soft, lonely. "Don't leave me." I didn't turn around. I didn't answer. I zipped my bag and walked out of the room for the last time. But as I reached the stairwell, I heard something that still haunts me. A small knock behind the wall. Knock, knock. Knock. Then the girl's voice. Someone new will come, right? A deeper voice answered. They always do. I ran out of Harrington Hall and never looked back. 2 months later, I heard that freshman students were being temporarily assigned to Harrington Hall again due to an overflow issue. New students were moving into the West Wing, into my old hallway, into rooms right next to the one that didn't appear on the blueprint. Room 1C27. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder, did the hidden door stay shut? Or did she find someone else to talk to? And if she did her roommate let them go? Which story scared you the most? Comment below and subscribe for more true horror stories.